I'm good. How are you?
Here with us today. She is a former teacher turned stay-at-home mom, and I am so excited to have this conversation with you because I feel like you have gone through pretty much what everyone listening has gone through, and it's going to be really fun to just hear from your perspective, like kind of where you are today and what got you there. So, to get us started, just tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of what got you into the fitness space, and like what your role in fitness nutrition is right now.
Yeah, so thank you for having me, first of all. And like you said, I am a current stay-at-home mom. I was a teacher for about 3.5 years. I have a bachelor's degree in family studies and human development, a master's degree in education, and that's just kind of where I landed. In high school, I was kind of told that this is the path that you want to take. You want to be a nurse. And I was like, cool, you all know what you're talking about. I don't know what I'm talking about. And so that was the path that I went on until I was in college, and I was like, this is not for me. I'm not loving this. So I went to my counselor and I just said, like, what'll get me done the fastest? I just want to be done. I've been taking college classes since I was 15. I'm done. And that's what she told me, and that's the path that I went on. And it was great. Honestly, I loved being in the classroom. I felt like I accomplished a lot and I loved being with the kids, but I had a really bad experience out of school and just decided that I was done. I needed to leave the classroom. I ended up getting pregnant, and so it just made sense for me to stay home. And I've been home ever since, and I would never change a thing.
That's awesome. What do you do? Like, so I feel like when you're a stay-at-home mom, there's different levels, right? Like some people get really involved in school, some people get really involved in like doing the kind of their own thing. Like, what do you do for yourself? And then how do you manage that with time for family?
I definitely, for myself, it's definitely making that time to move my body. Whether it's going on a walk, whether it's doing a YouTube video workout or being outside or just anything of that. That's like the one thing that I kind of prioritize for myself. I try not to see cleaning as like relaxing time. I try to, do other things that relax me. And that's my priority. And then when my husband is home, have that really tight knit family time, and it doesn't feel like I don't have my cup full. And so I definitely prioritize that.
I love that. And I know you were an athlete when you were younger. So walk us through that journey of like being an athlete, going into college, and then like living this life where you're just like not an athlete anymore, and like what that looks like.
Yeah, so I grew up really active. I always did sports. I played soccer, I was in gymnastics, I did cheer. And then I ate fairly healthy. I back then that's just kind of my family always just ate really healthy. And so I was always just really, really active. I did kind of struggle with like food intolerances when I was really little, but my family didn't like know any better at that time. We kind of just was like, well, whatever. And so I kind of just continued with that, being active. And unfortunately, kind of at that point, even from really young, I was comparing my body to other girls. I was always known to be the short and stocky girl. I'm 5'2", like I have a very muscular body type, and that was really hard when I felt like I was surrounded by girls who at least at the time seemed more petite. I mean, this is like elementary school age. It's just ridiculously young, and that's honestly so sad. I just the generation that I grew up in on needing to be stick thin, and that was like the ideal body image. And just from a young age, and it's nothing that our families, I don't honestly think that our families were like, you should look like this. I don't think it was that.
Yeah.
I think it's just what we were surrounded by with magazines and TV and like all of that stuff. And so, unfortunately, from a young age, that's just kind of where I was at. And then, fast forward to high school, I really kind of got into the gym. My dad used to go with me, and he kind of taught me the ropes of weightlifting and just the stair climber and like all of that. I had never really like been to the gym before that. That was around my sophomore year, and then once I kind of felt more comfortable being by myself, I was going consistently by myself, and I continued that and also playing soccer at the same time and cheering and kind of all of that. So being very, very active. The gym really didn't become a problem until I think around my senior year, like 2015. That's kind of when things kind of started to take a turn for me in the unhealthy way of viewing being active. But I kind of just, sorry, this is just like hard to talk about.
That's okay. That's okay. Take your time.
So like I said, my senior year is kind of when things kind of took a turn. Things got really unhealthy. I started taking supplements and trying to lean out my body and to have like this specific type of body. And I got those results, and I was restricting a lot. I was working out really, really hard, a lot harder than I probably should have been. And I was doing an hour on the stair climber. I was doing an hour plus of weights. I was doing an hour in the sauna, barely eating, still eating. I mean, I was eating a typical high school kid diet. I was eating the Taco Bell. I was eating that kind of stuff, but I was definitely not eating a lot and enough. At home, my diet was still healthy. My adults still cooked amazing meals, and that was never the problem, but it was more like internal. I felt like I just needed to look this certain way. And then that's kind of when things started, was around that 2015 mark.
Yeah. And so just real quick, I want to just like interrupt you because I looked at your Instagram obviously and I was like, this mom is hot. I was like, wait a second. I'm trying to look like her. So appreciate you opening up because I think like it's so easy to look at you now and think like, oh my God, she's a babe. Like I want to be just like her. And then like you don't know, right? Like all this stuff that you went through in order to get here. Because I think that is such a big part of the journey that a lot of people are like, looks at someone like you or whatever, and they're like, I don't know how I could possibly do that. Like, I don't know how to even get there. And so I think it's really important that when you feel comfortable, obviously we open up about these types of things because a lot of the things that you've experienced, even as in your youth, like that's what women are experiencing now. Eating the
Mhm.
1,200 calories, going to the gym, like just trying to lose weight because they're trying to be skinny. And especially at this point in our lives, like that is not what we need to do, right? And like we'll get into, I know you had some stuff, going on getting into getting pregnant, and it's just like that's where we are. We are at the society that needs to be skinny, needs to be thin, whatever it is. And then we're damaging our health for our futures and for our kids or whatever it is. So, and it's really interesting because I feel like I'm the complete opposite of you now, where I'm like the short, stocky one. But when I was a year like younger, I was this big by accident or like by genetics or whatever. I couldn't gain weight. I was so small, and then puberty hit, and girl, I was no longer small. Like, and I wasn't even like fat. I was just like got the hips, I got the butt,
Mhm.
like, and it was, and I did cheer as well, and I went from being a flyer and being super easy to throw to have to be on the ground and be a base because I was too big, like,
Mhm.
and not even a bad way.
Yeah, so during my undergrad, which was 2016 to 2018, I was still going to the gym consistently. I was still, working out my university campus and obviously walking a lot to class. I was walking probably at least 10 miles a day. I honestly don't know. I wish I had an Apple Watch back then to like refer back, but I don't know. I was walking a ton. The only thing that really changed were my eating habits. I was eating at my sorority house, which wasn't bad food. It was definitely, all homemade. We had a chef and all of that, but it was nothing like I was eating when I was at home, cooked by my parents. But I was also eating out quite a bit. I would kind of cook in my dorm room or kind of cook in the little kitchen once in a while, but it just wasn't as convenient, obviously, as cooking at home or anything else. I definitely wasn't drinking. I think I went out like very few times. I was so like head deep into like just getting it done that I didn't honestly have that typical college experience that everybody wishes for, I guess. I started to gain weight I don't want to say pretty quickly, but pretty quickly. And I was inflamed, but at this point, I didn't really know much. I didn't really know why I was getting inflamed because in my head, I didn't feel like I was doing anything different. It wasn't until I want to say 2000-ish. I don't know exactly when in 2017, but I did start working with a fitness coach that I had known my whole life. So then I started counting macros and weighing myself weekly. During that time, I think I had lost about 5 pounds, but I also wasn't in the headspace to like commit to macros. I did not like weighing food and all of that. It was just not fit for where I was in my life. So I ended up kind of stopping that after a few months. I did end up taking a food allergy test around that time, but I never did anything with the results. I just took it and kind of just was like, yep, sounds about right. You know, the dairy, there was some like nuts on there and kind of stuff like that. But I never really did anything with it. I kind of always knew I had a dairy intolerance, but I didn't really know how much it was affecting me until years later. I did kind of try to limit some things, but definitely not a ton. I definitely tried a few fad diets and just a few of like the programs that you kind of see, and nothing was working. I was just like gaining weight and I had no idea really why. Like, I don't know if it was like in my head, I was just like, oh, everything's the same, even though it definitely wasn't. But I was kind of starting to feel really defeated, and I kind of just chalked it up to the fact that I wasn't as active as I was when I was in high school.
Right.
And then I started my master's program in January 2000, and I was so unhappy with what I saw in the mirror. I was feeling horrible. I was constantly bloated. I felt like one of those toys that like you push and like nothing happens. Like it just has that indent. That's how I felt. I just felt so inflamed. I know I wasn't moving my body enough. And I was just kind of fed up. I was the heaviest that I'd ever weighed before. I think around that time I weighed like 140. And I don't really like talking too much about like weight because I feel like for everybody it's so
Mm-hmm.
different. But at that point, it was just not my normal. So at that point, I revisited my allergy test. I started an elimination diet right away. Like I said, I always knew I had a problem with dairy. So that was like the first thing I cut out. And then I cut out gluten and wheat just because at that time, that's kind of like what everyone was talking about and it causing inflammation. And I kind of had a gut feeling that that was going to be the problem. And lo and behold, it was. I did start going back to the gym about 2 to 3 days a week. And I was also chasing around kindergartners 4 days a week. So I definitely was a little more active than I was in my undergrad. I wasn't perfect with my diet by any means, but I was doing my best with what I knew at the time. I started noticing changes, how I was feeling. I was definitely feeling more confident. I was weighing myself pretty consistently, but it wasn't anything like obsessive at that point. And I was happy watching the scale go down and watching my body tone up and kind of, I felt like a little bit more of a mental clarity. I was still having, GI and inflammation issues, but I still was kind of like new to the food allergy situation at that point. And so I kind of was just like, it'll get figured out as time goes on. By the time I graduated from my master's program, I had lost about 20 pounds. So like by December 2019, I had lost like a total of 20 pounds. And I was definitely starting to feel better, like myself again, a little bit more. January 2020 is kind of when things took a major turn. I started becoming obsessed. I was working out a lot, probably 2 to 3 hours more into the gym. I was using my Fitness Pal to track my food and track my weight. I was restricting food really, really bad. I would literally eat a bag of popped popcorn, just like the ones that you microwave, and probably like two cuties for the entire day. And that was it. That's all I was eating. So that probably equates to like 500 calories, if that. That was not enough. Part of it was because I felt so horrible. Every time I would eat something, I would get bloated. I'd eat a grape, I'd bloat and I'd look like I was 9 months pregnant, and it was so defeating. I drink water, and I would bloat, and it was just so frustrating. And I was like, I just don't want to eat. I started to really, really hate food, and that just obviously was not healthy. At the time, I was also suffering with extreme headaches and migraines, and taking an actual insane amount of ibuprofen and Excedrin and things to help make it go away because they were debilitating. Obviously, anybody that knows that has migraines knows how miserable that
For
they
sure.
are. And so, like I said, at that time I was eating between roughly 500 to 1,000 calories a day. Just not enough. That's just like not enough. I was so focused on calories in versus calories out versus like what I was actually eating. My weight was definitely fluctuating a lot. I wasn't super consistent in weighing myself, but I was like up and down 5 pounds pretty for like almost a year. Like, but I still was like, again, I wasn't feeling it any better. And so I didn't really care about the weight. I was like, I don't even care what I weigh. I don't care. I just want to feel better. In that same January 2020, like towards the end, I went to see some doctors. I was like, I don't know what's happening, but I need to go to the doctor. Like my migraines are horrible. My stomach is insane. I had an MRI done for my head. They obviously nothing came of it, and the doctor just prescribed me pills, and those pills were not good. I just ended up not taking them because they would make me feel fuzzy. Like I felt like I had like a glass wall in front of my face, and that was it. Like my fingers would tingle, and I was like, this is not right. And so I just wouldn't
Yeah.
take them. That I also went and saw a GI doctor, and that had to be the most defeating experience, probably one of the most defeating experiences of my entire life. This doctor just completely blew me off, made me feel like I was crazy essentially, which I know a lot of people have had that when they've gone and see GI doctors. I know that there's plenty of GI doctors that are probably great, but I've talked to a lot of women who have seen GI doctors who have had the same experience that
Yeah.
I have. This GI doctor told me it's normal to bloat after you eat, and that I was breathing wrong, and that's why I was bloating. And I was all, breathing wrong. I'm taking inhale, exhale. How else? How else? Exactly. I remember my mom was sitting with me in the room, and I remember kind of just looking at her like, did you just hear that? Like, are we for real with the same, like, is he serious? And after that, I was like, all right, doctors aren't going to do it for me. They're not going to help me. They just don't know, and they're not really willing to help me figure it out. And so I kind of started to do things a little bit more on my own. I love cooking and baking. So that's at that point, that's when I started my A Little Dose of Hangry baking account, was because I was like, I love sharing recipes. I love all that. I'm just going to kind of try my best to allergify, is what I like to call it, recipes of things that I typically love to eat but can't anymore. And so I kind of found my escape in that, even though I still wasn't feeling great. It definitely, I don't want to say it helped because it didn't necessarily help, but it made me feel a little bit less alone because I started following accounts that kind of were going through the same thing that I was going through at that time. And it definitely made me feel less alone. Unfortunately, I just think we're at a point, I can't, maybe not so much now, but definitely then, which was only 4 years ago, but bloating and headaches and stuff are very common, but it's not normal. And I think that that's the problem, is that it's just so normalized that everyone's like, oh yeah, everybody has this. Well, no, it's common, yes. Normal, no, absolutely not. And so I started that, and I was definitely feeling a little bit better once I kind of took things into my own hands and like really narrowed in on the elimination diet. But I still wasn't feeling 100%. And so I did reach out to a nutritionist or dietitian. I can't exactly remember what she was. That was around March, April of 2020, maybe a little bit later than that. And we hit the ground running. Like, we tried every elimination diet. She tried me on the nightshades diet and like certain like food combination diets, like no raw vegetables and kind of stuff like that. But nothing was working. It still was not working. I was still would look 9 months pregnant after I would eat. And it was like so defeating. I love probiotics. Like, we just had tried everything. Nothing was working. We ended up doing another blood test, another type of allergy test. It was called the MRT, which is mediator release test. So we did that one, and that one popped up with, oh my gosh, just so much. And I was like, yeah, that's literally what it looked like. And so then it kind of leads you into like the LEAP plan. Like, the MRT test kind of gives you that LEAP plan to where it's like a food reintroduction diet. And that I was hard. I was so, even though I was restricted before, this was like insanely restrictive. This was a lot of whole foods, which was great. That's all fine and dandy. But when you can only eat a certain amount of things, I was like, at the sight of salmon after 4 days. Don't want to eat salmon again. Even to this day, I can't even look at salmon. I ate it so much during that time. But at that time, because of that test and because of the lack of food, I guess I was eating, I went from like 115 to like 108 in like a week. I was just losing weight in like I lost it so fast. And unfortunately, in my brain at that time, I was all, ooh, look at how little I'm eating, even more so than the beginning of 2020 when I was eating the bag of popcorn and cuties. It got even worse. Like, it was just crazy to think about. But so I was like, oh look, I lost weight. I weigh 108 pounds. This is great. I feel like I look good. I'm bloated at the end of the day, but whatever. During the day, I just won't eat. And then at the end of the day, I'll just be bloated, sleep, and the next morning everything will be fine. Everything was not fine, long story short. I, like I said, I was barely eating. I was working out just as hard during this time. I was still sauna, still hour, still walking, still running, still kind of doing all of that. I still felt, like I said, I was still feeling horrible. And I was researching and doing all the things everybody and everything said to do. I was drinking the kombucha. I was drinking tea. I completely cut out coffee for a little bit, which anybody that knows me knows that like me and coffee are best friends. And so the fact that I cut it out was a big thing for me. And I started drinking tea, taking probiotics, taking certain vitamins that I read that would help with, bloating and discomfort and kind of stuff like that. I did end up stopping working with that nutritionist because I felt like she didn't really know what to do at that point. At least at that time, it's kind of what it felt like. I was still in chronic pain. I would like bend over and I couldn't get back up. My back would hurt so bad. I was just having like that migraines weren't going away. Like it was just so bad at that point. And I just looking back, it's just like, it's insane just thinking about everything that I had put my body through. I don't even know. And at this point, I was still on birth control at this point. I'd gotten on birth control in 2000 or something like that. And I had been on it. I kind of had a feeling that it was a problem, but I didn't really know anything then as to why it was a problem or anything like that. I had a feeling that it was giving me issues, but I didn't know enough at that time. Now I do, thankfully. So that kind of sums up like college-ish and then a little bit after. In August of 2020, my now husband and I broke up after 6 years together. I was teaching online at the time, and so I ended up leaving. I moved out of our house and I moved back into my dad's house in a different state. I was still kind of eating that leap diet from the dietitian, but I kind of just stopped. I was just like, I was like out of routine. And so I kind of just stopped. I started drinking alcohol a little bit more. Nothing crazy, but when you go from not drinking at all to at least drinking every weekend or once a day every weekend or anything like that, I wasn't eating a lot either. So like I said, I was doing the leap test, but then I kind of stopped doing the leap test, but then I just stopped eating. I would go 2 days without having any food and I honestly wouldn't realize it. I would kind of like sit there and be like, when was the last time I ate? I'm like, oh my God, it was 2 days ago was the last time I had any food. But the main problem is the amount of caffeine I was having. I was drinking. I'm honestly surprised I didn't keel over because of how much caffeine I was drinking. I would have a cup of coffee in the morning. I would have probably an iced coffee in between there. I would have pre-workout. I would drink a Monster or two a day and probably another iced coffee. So I don't even want to know how many, like, I don't even want to know, but I'm just so surprised that things didn't get 10 times worse for me. I kind of had to reel it in once I one day was kind of shaking excessively and I was like, why am I shaking so bad? And I was, well, sis, you haven't eaten 2 days. That's why. And I knew my heart was like palpitating and I was like, this is just not good. And that's kind of when I got my caffeine intake under control. I started eating a little bit more after that. I definitely, once I realized that I wasn't eating enough, I started eating a little bit more after that. Nothing like I should have been, but I was definitely eating more. I did end up gaining about 15 pounds in 4 months just from, I think, drinking. I think that's honestly what it was. And then my body started getting inflamed again because I was eating not on that LEAP protocol that I had been on previously. And so I gained weight back. And you can only imagine what that did for somebody who'd worked so hard to lose. I don't want to say work so hard, but I was doing so much to stay a certain size. I can only imagine what that did for my mental health at that point. So that was around January 2021. I had realized how much weight I had gained, and I was like, oh no, this is just not good. And then in February of 2021, I found out that we'd be going back into the classroom full time after COVID. I found out that I would be going back in March, and so that I was going to have to move back to Arizona. And moving back to Arizona was a savior for me. I started getting my life back on track almost immediately. I hadn't realized like the amount of toxic friendships I had and how different my mindset was until I had moved back to Arizona. I started feeling myself again fairly quickly. I started drinking a lot less. I was back in the classroom full time, so I was chasing kindergartners again. And then I was going to the gym daily. That really hadn't changed. My roommates became my besties. They were everything I needed at that point. And then my husband and I started dating again. He was still in Arizona. I moved back and we kind of just fell back into each other. We had both grown from that time apart that we had and did a lot of soul searching. And so when I moved back, we fell back in. We started dating and then kind of fell back in love. Honestly, things were going well. I know. It's just like, it's one of those experiences. And, we've been together since we were 15. We've been together a really long time. And so I think we needed that time apart. We didn't really have that typical, like, break up when you graduate high school. We didn't have that. We moved together. We did all that. And I definitely think we needed that time to grow individually. And I don't think we'd have the relationship that we have now if we hadn't had that time apart. And so I think that, even though things were hard and that obviously sucks, breaking up and moving out and all of that, I definitely think that we both needed it. But yeah, things were going good. My stomach still wasn't great. Like I was still bloating and I was still, kind of having problems, but it was nothing but it from what I remember, it was nothing like as it had been. I was still eating quite a bit of processed foods, like dairy. I mean, I was still eating on my food allergy protocol, but I wasn't eating great. I was still eating a ton of chips, the ice creams and, and energy drinks and not really focusing on ingredients at that point. I was still focusing on like the calories on things versus the ingredients. So that's March-ish of 2020. And then in June of 2021, we found out that we were going to be moving across the country from Arizona to Virginia. And so we did. Yeah. So we did. We packed up everything we had known. We had lived in Arizona a long time. We went to high school in Arizona. That was our home. And so but we knew we needed that change and we just needed to get out. And so we moved to Virginia. At that point, I stopped going to the gym consistently. I was working out like at our apartment gym, but I wasn't working out like I had been before. I was still restricting the amount of food I was eating, but like honestly, I think I was probably only eating lunch and dinner. I've never really been a breakfast person. The thought of waking up and eating, I know everyone says like, wake up or eat within an hour of waking up. That just makes me want to puke. Like, that's just not going to work. And so I was eating lunch and dinner. And then it kind of got to a point where if we would take like pictures or if we had like plans to go and do something, I would not eat at all. I wouldn't eat. I would go all day without eating. The day we took our elopement pictures, I don't think I ate anything until after, so around dinner time. And at that time, I was 7 weeks pregnant and I had not eaten anything all day. And I think I barely drank any water because I didn't want to feel inflamed. Looking back, it's like, oh my God, Avery, like, what are you doing to yourself? Like, you were pregnant. Like, that's not, I know now, and I've learned from my mistakes. I'd had a miscarriage prior to that. Before we had moved to Virginia, I did have a miscarriage prior to that. And I think I was so down on myself and worried that no matter what I did, I was going to cause myself to have a miscarriage. And I don't know how I thought restricting food even more so was going to make that better, but I was battling that being pregnant and not wanting to lose the baby and not wanting to be bloated. Like, it's just like that. It's like that walking that fine line of being miserable on which way. And I just wasn't sure. Like I said, at that point I was eating within my food allergy and tolerance restrictions, but that was it. I did start researching a little bit more about food and started making some changes, but nothing crazy. So within that year, I ended up having 3 miscarriages total with no answers as to why. I had no answers. The doctor couldn't tell me why I was having miscarriages. And after my second miscarriage, my OB was like, "You're young, you're healthy. It probably won't happen again." It did. So I got pregnant. I had a third miscarriage. And after that, I was like, what is wrong with me? Like, the typical thing that women do is, what is wrong with me? It's my fault. I'm the reason that we're having these miscarriages. What is going on? And so then we did end up seeing a fertility specialist at that point. Usually after 3 miscarriages, they send you to a fertility specialist. We did every test under the sun. My husband and I, we did all of the things, all of the ultrasounds, all of the blood work, all of, the samples and this and that. And the doctor pretty much just said, everything looks good. I don't know. You have unexplained infertility. And I was all, are you shitting me? Like, that's your answer for me, is you just don't know? You don't know why my body is not like able to carry out a pregnancy, like I am miserable. Like this is hard on my mental health right now. And you just, and nothing. And you're like, yeah, like we just don't know. Like you're young, you're healthy. We're just not sure why. Like, the next step would be doing an IUI. And so he was like, we'll do 3 IUIs before we move on to IVF. And I was like, okay. I mean, at that point, I was like, I'm not a doctor. I don't know. You know best, I guess. And so then that's kind of what we were on the plan to do. We kind of just started the medication, started the vitamins, started all the things to do my IUI. And then their only thing was don't get pregnant. What did I do? I got pregnant. I ovulated late that month and I ended up getting pregnant with my now miracle baby. He's, a year old, so it all ended up working out exactly the way it needed to. But that was a kind of like a turning point for me because before that, I was listening to the podcast, following the Instagram accounts, starting to research, and that's kind of when like my crunchy lifestyle kind of had started, and I was like, whoa, like there's things that are not good for your body, and it doesn't, like, calories in, calories out, like that's not the only thing that matters. You have to nourish your body. You have to eat. Shocking. You have to eat food, real food, not grapes. Not, I mean, that is real food, but not just grapes and popcorn. Like you have to nourish, and you have to eat vitamins. Eat them, not take them, eat them. That is kind of when things took that turning point. And then, like I said, I had gotten pregnant with my son fairly quickly after. And things were good. Like I hadn't really had once I was making those changes, my stomach wasn't acting up as often. It was still acting up, but not as often. And I wasn't as miserable. I wasn't as scared to eat. It wasn't anything like that. So I did definitely start to slowly feel better. I started to heal my relationship with food at that point, but obviously I wasn't perfect. I still had anxiety about eating certain things. If we'd go out, I would be like, okay, I wouldn't punish myself like I used to in the past. We used to go out to eat and I'd punish myself the next day or see it as a cheat meal or this, and that. And instead of that, I kind of shift my mindset on this is food, you're eating, you're creating memories. And I think that's kind of what changed everything for me. But that was, I'm trying to think of the year. That was, I think, April or May of 2022 is kind of when so that's like a big chunk of time where I was just researching and finding Instagram accounts, reading books, and like I was saying, just trying to do what I could to keep a pregnancy. If these doctors weren't going to figure it out, I was going to figure it out because unexplained infertility is not enough for me. That is just not the answer. Other than that, the only thing that had changed was my fitness. I wasn't working out as hard. I was doing Pilates, I was doing yoga, I was going on walks. I would work out at our apartment gym, but obviously that's not like the same as I would do at a normal gym. So that kind of, once I got pregnant with my son, I don't know if it's just the pregnancy or if like I just became a real adult or what happened, but I always say my son healed me because after I had him, I swear things got 10 times better. And I've heard that before. People have like been healed from certain things after they have a baby. And I swear for the rest of his life, I'm going to thank him for healing me because, I mean, and I think a lot of different factors have to do with the way that I'm feeling now after I left my toxic work environment. That was I was trying to get pregnant as I was miserable at work. And that's just a whole nother thing. Like, just my stress levels came down once I left the classroom. I didn't feel like I was in fight or flight all the time, even though when I got pregnant, I was still technically in the classroom, but I knew I was leaving. Like I knew that I wasn't going to be staying there the rest that next school year, regardless. I was going to a different school or I was leaving education altogether. I just knew I was not staying at that school. And so I don't think my body was in fight or flight all the time. I started prioritizing myself and really used my pregnancy to heal my relationship with food and working out. Obviously I couldn't starve myself. I was pregnant and hungry. A girl was hungry. And I wasn't, and it was nothing crazy. Like, I mean, it's so funny, like seeing other women and like some friends and whatever. It's like, oh, baby's craving this. Oh, baby's craving this. And I was like, yeah, before you got pregnant. And then I got pregnant and oh no, baby's craving this, baby's craving that. Like, I need it. I cried over avocados. I was like dipping French fries and like chocolate and hot sauce. So to say, yeah, to say that my son healed me is quite literally, like before, I would never have eaten any of that. Like, I would never have eaten a French fry dipped in chocolate and hot sauce, obviously, but I would have punished myself for it. I would have punished myself for eating the French fries. So now, fast forward to now, I cycle sync my workouts. I listen to my body, eat when I'm hungry, so I intuitively eat. I have a very low toxin life. You know, that crunchy lifestyle really, I really took her and went with her. I cut out a lot in my life, and not in a bad way. Like, I still call myself 80/20. Like, I am not giving up my favorite creamer. Absolutely not. It will not happen. That is it's the only, I've tried to make creamers, and it's not working. So I am 100% an 80/20 girly, but I definitely think eliminating some of those things from my life have made me feel the way that I do now. I don't get bloated. I don't want to say never, because I literally just had a situation where I broke out like I was 15 and I was bloated for like 2 weeks straight. I don't know why. I don't know if I cross contaminated myself or what, but I'm going to say 80% of the time I'm feeling great and I don't feel like I have to restrict, and I don't feel like I'm bloated all the time or I'm inflamed or I'm not falling back into those old habits. When I do get bloated, I don't starve myself. I just nourish my body. I eat whole foods. I do the castor oil packs. I do yoga. I go on walks. I sit outside. I read. I don't punish myself as bad. I don't, and it's hard to think back on the things that I was doing to my body back then. And I'm glad that I'm at the point that I'm at now. But, dealing with disordered eating is something I think almost every woman can relate to. And I don't think really anybody in my life truly knows how bad it was. I mean, my husband and, maybe a few close friends, but I don't really think anybody knows how bad it ended up getting. And I know that there are women who struggle with it 10 times worse, that really do have that diagnosed food allergy or food.
Okay, so I know that you have gone through so much, and I wanted to like take away from some of the things that you have said that you've done to try to upgrade your lifestyle and like get healthier. What are some of the things that you feel like are non-negotiable for someone who's not a stay-at-home mom? Like, what would you emphasize for them if they can't do everything that you've done, but like what are the most key important factors?
Moving your body in a way that feels good for you. That just because I'm doing it one way or your friend is doing it another way doesn't mean that it's perfect for you. So I feel like women need to really get in tune with their bodies and figure out what feels good. The gym and lifting heavy weights does not feel good for me. And so I stopped doing that. And I started doing things that like I said, Pilates, yoga, low impact movement, and that would be the one thing. Another thing is eat what eat what feels good. Like, I hate the word, like, the good food and bad food, but there's good ingredients and not so good ingredients. And I think nourishing your body with those good ingredients and not a ton of processed, like just those whole foods, and still have that 20% of whatever that that you really feel like that you just don't want to cut out, or whatever the case may be, or going out, or any of that. But I just think that we need to stop comparing to certain Instagram profiles and to certain influencers to what they eat, because you and I could do the same exact thing and we're not going to look the same. And so I just think that everybody needs to realize that it's not one size fits all, that every single person is different. So you need to find what feels good for you.
Yeah, I love that. And I think like it's so important because like I myself am a power lifter, and at one point I tried to go into bodybuilding, and I just like I don't have the discipline, and I do not enjoy the workouts, and like I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
going to do them. And then I've gone through phases in my life where like yes, I have a coach, yes, I train for powerlifting, but like I just fall in and out of love with it based on
Mm-hmm.
the season, based on life, and like that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I train through it anyway. But like for clients who aren't doing that, like it's always about the season that we're in. Like I really emphasize to my clients that you don't have to go to the gym. Like we can make it
Mm-hmm.
work at home. Like it's okay. Cause like you said, it's about moving your body. It's about
Mm-hmm.
being able to love who you are and what you're capable of. And not everybody is capable of putting 300 pounds on their back. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it just is what it is, right? Um, Now, the difference there is that if that's something you want to work towards because that's what you love, okay, great, we can work towards that. But you don't have to be that person just because like somebody's telling you that you have to, right? Like
Exactly.
you just don't. So I love that you said that because I think that's incredibly important. I guess another question I have for you, and feel free to answer this as you feel comfortable. Like, but what has your husband's role been through this entire health journey that you've been in, especially through the infertility? Like, how have you guys like managed and kept that relationship strong?
So he's been there, since the beginning, obviously. We've been together for so long that he's been there through all of it. And he's been my rock, honestly, through it. He has been there when I'm crying because I don't feel good or trying to help me figure out why I don't feel good, all the way back to college years and we were trying to figure out why I didn't feel good. And he would help me, you know, cut certain things out or find certain restaurants that we could go to that I could actually eat at. And, then during my time when things were, really bad, he kind of, my husband's a very quiet man and doesn't really say a lot, but he would kind of like, you're shaking, like you're so hungry, you're shaking, you have to eat. Like you need to eat something. It was never, he never pressured me, but it was like, you need to eat something. You need to like, this is not working. Like you don't feel good, you're shaking. Things aren't like, I'm sorry you don't feel good, but you got to eat something. And then during my infertility, I mean, I don't think I would have gotten through it without him. We did not tell anybody in our lives that what was going on. He and I were the only ones that knew about my miscarriages. I didn't want the outside noise of, oh, it'll happen when it happens, or stop stressing, or you should do this. I honestly just didn't want that. I didn't care. I was not at the point in my life where I was okay in hearing those things. It just irritated me. And so
Mm-hmm.
I really leaned on my husband during that time. And I honestly think that he saved me during that time just because he was also going through it. He was losing babies. It wasn't just me that was losing babies. He was
Right.
watching me be in pain and having to have these procedures done and having to just, I honestly hate myself because I felt like it was me at the time. Like, I mean, and I
Right.
tried not to fall into that of like, the typical, like I was saying, the typical, oh, it's me, because now knowing what I know that it's not really always just the woman and that there's other things that, play a factor in it. But, he played a huge role in that of let's do what it takes. There was no end to what he was willing to do. He knew starting a family was important to me. He obviously wanted a family with me. It was, and he was just there and he did everything that we needed to do with no complaints. He held me when I needed to be held and he he fed me when I needed to be fed. And
Oh,
so
I love that.
that is, I think after 10 we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year. We've been together just so long. I just think that we've grown up together and I just honestly I couldn't have done any of it without him, honestly.
That's amazing. I mean, the support system that you had during that time, like the fact that it was really just him and you guys were
Mhm.
able to bond through it, like that's so important, right? Because I think that a lot of the times I'm hearing these stories about how stuff like this like tears families apart and it's so
Mhm.
heart-wrenching. And were there any like specific things that you guys took the time to do, like date nights or anything like that that really helped held it together for you?
Date nights, yeah, we did. After we started dating again, after we had broken up and got back together, and we did start dating. We were going on like weekly date nights, and we were going to the gym together and stuff. And we prioritized that once we moved. We didn't really do that before. We kind of fell into like that friendship roommate situation. We didn't really like date. And so when we moved and gotten back together and all of that, we just were like, we need to continue to date. And that's what we had done. Even when I was struggling with infertility, we didn't let it define us. We still did things that were important to us. We still traveled, we still got out, and we still, you know, built, because like you said, there's plenty of people that it completely tears their relationship apart, whether it
Mm-hmm.
be with their husband, their spouse, whatever the case may be.
Right.
And we were so bound and determined to not let that be us again because we had already separated and we didn't want that to be us again. And so,
Mm-hmm.
and don't get me wrong, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Like there were times that it was like, do you want this? Like, are we doing this together? Is this like, are we doing this? Like, this is just, it's just hard. Like, I just don't think it's so one of those things where it's like, you just don't know until you're going through it. You can think, about how somebody's feeling, and oh, that must suck that you're losing pregnancies, and oh, that, it doesn't affect the man as much because he's not the one losing the pregnancies. And it's like, that's just not the case. Obviously, it's just it affected us in different ways. Obviously, for me, it was definitely very physical. Obviously, I was hurting, and then mental as well. And with him, like I said, he was having to watch me be in pain, and he's having to deal with the fact that he's also losing these potential babies as well. And so I think that we really found that time to connect and date and just prioritize each other, whether that was being date nights at home or date nights out.
Yeah. No, I love that. And then I know you said that right now you're kind of doing intuitive eating. So give the listeners that are interested in doing some intuitive eating or something like that, like what is it that you look for in foods? Like how do you know your body's hungry? How do you know how to feed yourself when you're not counting, like things like that?
So looking for in food, I don't really eat anything out of a package. It's very rare that I eat anything out of a package. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, I love a beef stick from Costco. I will munch on some beef sticks from Costco. Though the Archers, shout out to Archers because those are our favorite. But I really try to make everything at home, especially because I can't eat a ton. And the gluten-free stuff and the vegan stuff either taste like trash or the ingredients are just trash. Like, I wish I could, honestly, it would be easier for me to tell you the amount of things I can eat versus the amount of things I can't eat because of my food allergies and food intolerances. The list is just so long on the things that I cannot eat, that it just made it so much easier for me to start making things from home. So I make everything. I make gummies, I make goldfish, I make pizza crust. Like, I make everything from home. The only thing I don't make that I'm working on is a vegan cheese. That is the only thing that I haven't mastered yet. But when it comes to intuitive eating, I used to not be hungry for breakfast, and I've heard both things of like you should wake up hungry and that it's okay to not eat breakfast. I've heard both things, and I think that everybody's just going to do what's right for them. I'm not going to force myself to eat. I don't think that it's healthy to force yourself to eat. If you're not hungry, I mean, don't get me wrong, don't go all day without eating. That's not healthy. But right in the morning, if you're not hungry, okay, like, maybe eat a little snack later. Like, I usually eat around 9:30, 10. I would say is like my first, which isn't like anything crazy. I used to go until like 1 o'clock without eating, but now I'm hungry because I'm chasing a toddler. And so I'm eating. And I think my gut is healed. I honestly do think that once you heal your body stops being in so much fight or flight and will accept things. I think my body was just like, no, no, I don't want anything because I don't want it. Um, and so I kind of eat, and I would love to say I have this like beautiful protein packed breakfast. I am allergic to eggs. I cannot have eggs. And that's a main breakfast thing. And so my
Hmm.
breakfasts are I make gluten-free sourdough and avocado, or sometimes I have banana bread with, I'm allergic to nuts as well, so I have sun butter with that. Um, that's kind of like a normal breakfast for me. And lunches are usually leftovers of some sort. Nothing. Sometimes I'm a snacky girl. I wish I wasn't so snacky, and I wish I could just like 3 meals perfect and be done. Some days I'm fabulous at that. Other days I'm pretty sure I just rather snack on fruit and vegetables and random things, but then I don't feel good. And I think that took me a while to be like, oh, you're snacking too much. That's why you don't feel good, because you had 18 different things, and instead of just having one meal. So that's something that I still work on now, just because it's just my personality to snack. My husband's a snacker, I'm a snacker, my family's are snackers. Like, it's just where I come from. And then dinner is always something different every day. I make something new. I'm not a big like leftover dinner type. I'm better now, but I'm just not a big leftover person anyways. But I try to, we do genre days. So I thought I like plan my week. So it's like we do like a taco night, or like, some sort of Mexican. We eat pasta every week. Every Friday for the past, I want to say 6 years, we've had pizza and wings every single Friday. It's just a tradition in our house. So I make pizza and wings every single Friday. But yeah, I mean, I feel like finding foods that feel good for you, and that, try to make as much as you can at home. Like I said, I'm a crunchy girl, and so ingredients do matter to me. They don't matter to everybody, but I think researching a little bit on what is important to you and what you're okay putting in your body And, finding things that fit within that is honestly the most important.
I couldn't agree more. And I say this not necessarily being like I wouldn't even say crunchy. I am just someone who like I don't have as many gut issues, but I do have struggled with my gut. And I have struggled with it just like so many things. And I recently started making my own sourdough, and it's something I
Mhm.
wanted to do forever. And like I just was like, oh, it's so hard. And
Mhm.
it is hard to get started. But once you do it, it's so easy.
Mhm.
And like you're like, oh, I don't have to care that much. Like I don't care what the
Mhm.
crumb looks like. I
Yeah.
don't have a bakery. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like whatever. And so I say this to say I have noticed an incredible change in like my ability for my stomach in general. Like I'm not bloated all the time and I'm eating dairy, and that's something that I haven't done before because I always thought dairy was an intolerance. And I think the intolerance, right, is the whole gut and the whole
Mhm.
microbiome. If it's not in a good shape, it's going to
Mhm.
be really harsh. And so I think there are chemicals in certain packaged foods, like you alluded to, that like are harmful to you, but it's so hard to indicate exactly what it
Yeah.
is.
And that's like the thing
So
that I also kind of think about is that nothing is going to be perfect. Honestly, things in the United States, our food, I could go on forever about how irritated it makes me with the things that are okay. Honestly, some of the books that I'm reading right now, it it's mind-boggling to me. But a lot of our food is sprayed with glyphosate, and I don't think people realize what effect glyphosate has on the body. And that is the one thing I feel like you need to find a few ingredients that are really important for you to stay away from. And again, that's going to change family to family. Some people just don't care about certain things, and that's fine. Like, but the problem is that people say like, oh, my generation, the older generation, oh, my generation ate this and we're fine. It's like, okay, well, let me bring out this book for you and all this research that shows that today the food is different than it was even 20 years ago, 30 years ago. The food is different and the process is different. It's just not the same. So yeah, in 1950 and 1960, 1970, when you were eating that, it didn't look the same as it does now. It's not sprayed with these chemicals. I saw something on Instagram today actually that had showed this, like, it was like a hazard sign along these crops. So it's okay for us to eat it, but it's not okay for you to walk on it. Like, riddle me that. Just riddle me that's like, and it's just being sprayed with these chemicals. And I think that people are like, "Listen, like, I don't know why I don't feel good. I don't know why I don't feel good. I don't know why I don't feel good." That's why you don't feel good. It's just because of the food system that we have. You ever wonder why people go to Italy and go to Europe and X, Y, and Z and can eat all the food and feel fine? Well, there's your answer, because they don't have like this mass production of just food. And so I just think that every family needs to find like a few chemicals that are just non-negotiables for you to, try to eliminate, and then just kind of see how you feel. Like you said with the sourdough, like I have to obviously do gluten-free sourdough, but sourdough has such amazing effects for the gut. It's just so good for you. And I just wish people would take the time to research. The sourdough they buy from the store is not real sourdough. And I hope everybody in this sourdough era that we're in has now realized that is that it's not the same. It should be flour, water, salt for, a regular gluten sourdough loaf. And you go to the store and you look at the package, it's not flour, water, salt. It's not that. And I wish that we would kind of be on that same page of like, things do matter. It does matter what you put in your body. And, if you are feeling inflamed, kind of like take a look at the chemicals that you're eating and what you are eating and where it's coming from. Obviously, with inflation and X, Y, and Z, it's so hard to eat organic and, you know, eat. Everyone says like, oh, it's so expensive to eat that way. And it is. It definitely is. And inflation isn't helping that at all. But doing what you can, making the changes that you can make, I think will make all the difference when somebody is just feeling defeated and just not feeling like it's ever going to get any better. Because I've been in those shoes and it does get better. It may take a while, but it does get better.
yeah, absolutely. I think what you said is spot on. Like find the couple of things that you know are non-negotiables and
Mm-hmm.
just stick to that and just make it a little bit more digestible for you. I think that's incredibly like very insightful and very easy, much easier to digest than being like don't get anything. Because
Exactly.
obviously the other thing like when you have kids, I'm sure your kids go to school. Well, if your kids are going to school and seeing all these other people, like all these other kids have, they want to try it, you don't want to say no,
Yeah.
but you want to like have that reason and make sure that like your home doesn't have it, but they have it every once in a while. And then you can kind of take inventory, like, okay, well, are they feeling crappy? Like what's going on
Hmm.
with that? And I think that's an incredible way to digest that. And it's just like everyone keeps saying that I'm gonna be like a homesteader, and I'm like, well, I don't have enough space for that. But I do want my own chickens, and I did start making
Hmm.
my own butter, and now I make my own carbs. And I'm just like, it's
Yeah.
fine.
I just think that people are
uh,
realizing. I honestly think, and that people are realizing. It's becoming more apparent that what is happening in our world, and I think people just are fed up and they just want to do things themselves. Thankfully, I have this space. I'm not quite on board with chickens yet. I'm really working on it. Chickens scare me. Like, I'm that girl that runs away from chickens, and I have two huskies that just really want to play with the chickens. And so we're working on it. I'm still trying to convince my husband. So, you know, anybody wants to help me convince him. But I just think
I can't even help.
I just think that,
We're in that era.
yeah, we really are. Just people are just starting to realize that, it's just things are just not what they should be. And like you said, like I had said as well, like just finding just those little things. And you walk the fine line of with children of not wanting them to have because everyone tells me like, oh, you have a horrible relationship with food because you see food good and bad. And I'm like, well, no, like I don't have a horrible relationship with food. Like, and yes, your kids can walk that fine line of we can have this, we nourish our bodies with this when we're at home, and it's okay to have this, once in a while when we're at school or at birthday parties or whatever. I just think you need to have that conversation with your kids on what you will allow with your family. And everybody's different. Some families are diehard, like, no, you will not eat that. And same families are not. Like, I choose to, when I'm at home, I'm going to nourish my body with foods that make me feel good, but I'm still going to go out and get the good tacos. I don't even want to know what they make it with. I don't care. I don't know. I'm going to eat it. And it's going to feed my soul. There's soul foods and there's, health food. That's what I call them. So I always say, oh, I want to feed my soul today. And that's what we do. And I just think that it doesn't need to be so black and white. I think people need to make smarter decisions, yes, but it doesn't need to be so black and white and see food as such an enemy, I guess.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love that. Okay, so towards the end of the podcast, I am asking people a funny question. And I know you don't go to the gym, but from maybe before, but fuck, marry, or kill, squat, bench, deadlift. As a power lifter, I feel like I have to.
What are my options again? How do you think?
Squat, bench, or deadlift.
I'm gonna fuck a squat for sure. I like to squat. I really love to squat. I'm gonna marry the bench. Now I'm gonna kill the deadlift. That's so funny. I always remember when I would like actually go to the gym and I was like, oh, I love leg day. I love it. And then, but yeah, I like squats for the most part. So my Instagram is at a little dose of hangry. That is where I share all things recipes, and I share, health and wellness on there as well. That's the best way. I'm on TikTok, but it's nothing crazy. I pretty much post the same thing on my hangry account. My hangry account is where I'm the most active. So that'd be the best place to find me. And if anybody needs to chat, that's the best way. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. You too. Bye.